Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're not just stepping back in time to a specific year. No, we're inviting you to journey into a single, ordinary, yet truly extraordinary day in 1895 Minneapolis.
Right, picture it.
Yeah, a city on the cusp of a new century, bustling with, well, burgeoning prosperity, its skyline slowly reaching for the heavens. But then let's look closer, kind of below the surface, to a life that actually fueled so much of that prosperity, yet remained, largely unseen.
It's a fascinating lens, actually, because we're talking about the very backbone of that era. It's a pivotal moment in American history, seen through the incredibly demanding yet profoundly hopeful life of one woman.
One specific woman, yeah.
And our mission today is really to provide you with a shortcut to being truly well-informed about a part of the Guild Age you might not have considered in quite this light before.
Absolutely. This deep dive is all about Inga, a young Norwegian immigrant domestic servant. We're going to unpack her daily existence in 1895 Minneapolis.
And we're drawing from a pretty rich stack of sources here.
We are. Historical accounts, meticulous research, some personal notes even. Our goal is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge for you.
Right.
You're going to gain some surprising facts and hopefully a completely new perspective on the intricate workings of a society built on, well, often invisible labor.
And right from the start, we're confronted with a core paradox. Like her.
What's that?
Well, immigrants, including Inga, often fled what was explicitly described as hard work and disappointment in their homelands. Norway, in her case.
Okay. Seeking something better.
Exactly. Yet they frequently found themselves immersed in equally, if not more, physically demanding labor right here in America. So it raises this compelling question. What was this hope for a new life truly about, if it wasn't actually an easing of their toil?
That's where it gets truly insightful, I think. We'll reveal how it was, in essence, a strategic trade-off.
The trade-off. How so?
Well, it wasn't about finding less work, necessarily, but finding a viable pathway to future opportunities. Opportunities that were simply vanishing back home.
Ah, okay. So a different kind of work, maybe.
Kind of. For Inga, this meant trading, say, unpredictable agricultural struggle or economic dead ends in Norway for consistent cash wages here.
Right. Wages were key.
Exactly. A direct route to saving for land, maybe, or helping family members migrate over. It was a tangible, albeit arduous, path forward. A long game played out day by strenuous day.
A long game. I like that framing. It makes sense of that apparent contradiction.
So let's set the stage a bit more for Inga's world. We need to understand the currents that swept her, and thousands like her, to Minneapolis.
Okay.
The late 19th century was truly a transformative period in American history, marked by immense demographic shifts, just massive waves of immigration.
People pouring in from all over Europe and beyond.
Yeah, each seeking a new beginning, a fresh start on, unfamiliar shores.
And among those diverse groups, Norwegians constituted a remarkably prominent and actually influential community.
You really see that in the numbers.
Oh, absolutely. Consider the sheer scale. Between 1825 and 1925, over 800,000 Norwegians made the arduous journey across the Atlantic to the United States and Canada.
800,000, that's staggering.
It is. It cements their presence as a substantial European ethnic group on the continent.
Yeah.
And it led to the formation of these vital cultural pockets.
And Minnesota became a particular magnet for these Scandinavian newcomers, didn't it?
It really did. It attracted a significant number of these immigrants and evolved into a vital cultural center for Norwegian Americans.
It was almost like, I picture it as a slice of Norway transplanted right into the American Midwest. It must have created a familiar, maybe comforting landscape for these new arrivals.
To some extent, yes. And within that broader picture, Minneapolis itself grew into a crucial urban hub.
Why Minneapolis specifically?
Well, as readily available, good farmland became increasingly scarce, especially near the established Norwegian communities where people might have initially aimed to settle.
Right, the best land gets taken first.
Exactly. So Minneapolis began drawing immigrants away from that agrarian life, which had been the primary lure for so many.
And the city offered something else.
It offered diverse and frankly desperately needed employment opportunities that the dwindling frontier just couldn't provide anymore. Mills, factories, construction, and service.
Which brings us directly to Inga. She isn't merely a historical footnote. Her story is, as you said, profoundly representative. As a young, single Norwegian woman in 1895 Minneapolis, her life as a domestic servant provides a powerful, often overlooked lens. a way to examine this complex interplay of aspirations and the, formidable challenges faced by a huge segment of the immigrant population.
And it's crucial to understand that domestic work, performed by countless individuals like Inga, formed an often unseen foundation for the burgeoning prosperity and, frankly, the social fabric of American cities during the Gilded Age.
The engine below deck, kind of?
Exactly. It was quite literally the unacknowledged engine that kept households running, freeing up other segments of society to pursue other things.
And when we say unacknowledged, we mean invisible. Consider this statistic we found. In 1891, domestic work accounted for a remarkable 41% of the entire female workforce.
41%, just let that sink in.
Almost half of all working women were in domestic service. It's huge.
It is. And this pervasive reliance suggests that the elaborate social lives, the cultural pursuits, the booming economic activities of the middle and upper classes were, in essence, entirely subsidized by the demanding, low-wage work of individuals like Inga.
So their leisure, their ability to pursue education or philanthropy or focus on
It
business.
was all built on this unseen labor. Precisely. Individuals like Inga performed tasks traditionally managed by housewives. Their labor became indispensable for maintaining what was often called the sophistication and decorum of affluent households.
Keeping up appearances.
Pretty much. Their relentless daily efforts enabled a particular form of societal advancement. It freed up American women of means for social and philanthropic endeavors, allowing them to engage with burgeoning women's clubs or reform movements.
And the men.
It permitted men to concentrate entirely on their businesses and professions. It's a very clear illustration of how one segment of society's comfort and progress was built directly on the demanding, often physically debilitating, labor of another.
So if we circle back to that immigrant paradox we mentioned earlier, the sources detail severe economic hardship, overpopulation, limited land, and this pervasive weariness from hard work and disappointment as the push factors compelling emigration from Norway.
People were trying to escape lives that were often brutal and offered little future.
Right, they weren't leaving paradise.
Definitely not.
Yet the conditions of domestic work in America were consistently described, often in the very letters or accounts they might have read before coming, as physically demanding, heavy, repetitious, and eventually debilitating.
Doesn't sound like much of an improvement.
And well, exactly. Some accounts even called it, quite tellingly, one of the least popular ways for 19th century women to make a living.
So it really begs the question, why exchange one form of grueling labor for another, often equally unpleasant form? It's a striking contradiction, isn't it? Immigrants often exchanged one form of grueling labor and disappointment in their homeland for another in America.
But the key difference, as we were saying, was that the hope for a new life wasn't necessarily a promise of less toil,
Right.
but rather an expectation of a different kind of labor, one that offered a viable pathway to future opportunities that were just increasingly elusive back in Norway.
Like what specifically?
Things like saving for land, maybe supporting family members back home, or simply the ability to accumulate even a small bit of capital. That was huge.
Okay, so it's about potential, future potential.
Exactly. And Inga's narrative, as we'll continue to explore, embodies this intricate trade-off perfectly. It's a story not just about immediate survival day to day, but about a very pragmatic, long-term vision.
Right, the intense demands of her daily existence were, in a way, justified by the promise of a brighter, more secure future for herself and maybe her family. A future she could realistically build, penny by penny, through her labor.
Okay, so let's dig into that a bit more. What really propelled this immense exodus of Norwegians to America in the late 19th century?
Well, as you said, it wasn't just one thing. It was a powerful confluence of adverse conditions back home and the perceived, sometimes romanticized, promise of the New World.
So let's start with the push factors. What was driving them out of Norway?
Economic hardship was undeniably the primary driver. Norway at this time was predominantly an agricultural nation, but it grappled with severely limited arable land.
Not enough farms to go around.
Pretty much.
Ugh.
And this challenge was greatly exacerbated by rapid population growth. So this demographic pressure meant that younger sons in particular often faced the grim reality of not inheriting land.
No inheritance, no livelihood.
Right. It compelled them to seek livelihoods elsewhere. For many, it was quite literally a matter of survival, a choice between stark poverty at home or taking a chance and emigrating.
And it wasn't just about the land itself, was it? The industrial age was having weird effects.
It really was. Paradoxically, the very advancements of the industrial age, while making the ocean voyage itself more feasible.
Faster steamships. Yeah.
Exactly. Those same advancements were actually undermining Norway's traditional economy. Our sources tell us that the widespread adoption of steamships, for instance, rendered tens of thousands of shipbuilders, dock workers, and sailors redundant.
Wow. Their whole way of life just vanished.
Pretty much overnight, it created this huge pool of displaced workers with skills that were suddenly obsolete.
And what about the farmers who did have land?
Well, simultaneously, Norwegian farmers found themselves utterly unable to compete with the influx of cheaper grain that was now easily imported from continental Europe, thanks again to better transport.
So global markets hitting local farmers.
Precisely. This further destabilized the agrarian sector, hitting the very heart of the Norwegian economy. So for many, like Inga, the decision to emigrate wasn't just a personal choice. It was a direct response to these big, systemic shifts that had fundamentally eroded their traditional means of survival and prosperity.
They became part of a larger, globally displaced workforce, really.
In a way, yes. Compelled to seek new horizons.
And beyond the economic pressures, you mentioned religion.
Yes, religious freedom also played a significant role for some. The state Church of Norway wielded considerable control over religious practices and social life.
And not everyone agreed with it.
Right. This led dissenting groups, particularly evangelical Lutherans who felt stifled by the rigid state church, to seek refuge in lands where they could freely practice their beliefs without facing societal pressure or antagonism. For them, America represented spiritual liberty as much as economic opportunity.
Okay, so those are some powerful push factors. What about the pull factors of America? Why here specifically? Why was it so alluring?
Well, America, particularly the vast, seemingly endless expanses of the Midwest, was widely perceived as a land of boundless opportunities and abundant land.
The American dream, basically.
Yeah, it was the core of it, yeah. This was the dream being sold in letters home, in pamphlets, and it was genuinely sought by hundreds of thousands.
And central to that dream, especially for Norwegians, was the agrarian ideal, right? Owning your own farm.
Deeply rooted in their identity. The allure of fertile farmland and the promise of the Homestead Act of 1862.
That's the one offering 160 acres.
Yes, 160 acres of land to families willing to cultivate it for at least 5 years. That resonated profoundly with Norwegian aspirations. Many immigrants harbored a strong desire to embody that Tocquevillian ideal. The independent, self-sufficient farmer, deeply engaged in their community and democracy.
Sounds idyllic.
It did. And this ideal wasn't just some vague hope. It was fueled by a robust and efficient flow of information.
How so?
Faster steamship travel made the journey more feasible and less harrowing than in the age of sail. And crucially, hopeful, often quite embellished, letters from earlier settlers, like the famous Ole Rinning.
Ah, yes, the America letters.
Exactly. They painted this vivid picture of prosperity and self-sufficiency. These letters were a powerful form of word-of-mouth marketing, offering a vision of what life could be for those brave enough to make the journey.
But, here comes the reality check.
Right? Despite that powerful agrarian ideal and the promises whispered in letters, the reality upon arrival often necessitated a reevaluation of those dreams.
What happened?
By the 1880s and 1890s, when Inga would have been arriving, the availability of truly good, accessible farmland became increasingly scarce, especially near established Norwegian communities where new arrivals might have hoped to settle for support.
The dream wasn't quite as easy to grasp as it seemed from across the ocean.
Not anymore. This practical limitation, the simple lack of available productive land near existing settlements, led many Norwegians to gravitate towards burgeoning urban centers like Minneapolis.
Okay, so plan B.
Essentially, here they found employment in the booming industries, the lumber mills, the flour mills, the mines, and significantly for our story, in domestic service.
So this represents a profound evolution in the immigrants' aspirations then.
It really does. It wasn't about abandoning the dream of independence entirely, perhaps, but adapting the path to achieve it.
Right. While the initial draw was often the promise of agrarian independence, the practical realities pushed many, including Inga, into urban wage labor.
But the dream didn't die.
No, exactly. The fact that Inga still dreams of saving enough money to buy a small piece of land directly reflects this enduring agrarian ideal, even as her daily life was defined by the confines of urban domesticity.
It's a pragmatic compromise. A detour, maybe, but one that still holds the original destination somewhere in sight.
That makes sense.
And if we connect this to the broader context of the immigrant experience, it's actually worth noting that urban life, even as a domestic servant, could paradoxically be an improvement over some of the early rural experiences.
Really? How?
Well, early Norwegian settlers in rural Minnesota, say a generation or two before Inga, often endured extremely harsh living conditions. They frequently resided in small, poorly ventilated sawdust cabins made of sawed bricks or literally dug into hillsides.
Oh, wow, like living in the ground.
Pretty much. These were often dark, damp, lacked basic sanitation, making outbreaks of disease like cholera or diphtheria, and even mental illness shockingly common due to the isolation and hardship.
So, in that context.
In that context, urban domestic work, despite its own inherent difficulties, could offer more stable shelter, consistent employment, maybe slightly better food, and better access to basic amenities compared to the sheer precariousness and isolation of pioneering on the prairie. It was a different, often difficult, but potentially more secure form of hardship.
That's a really important perspective. It wasn't always exchanging bad for good, but maybe one type of hardship for a slightly less risky one.
With a clear path to saving, perhaps, yeah.
Okay, let's truly unpack Inga's actual day now. Let's get into the life below stairs in 1895 Minneapolis.
Right. And it was, as we've hinted, a relentless cycle of physically demanding labor, dictated minute by the needs of her employer's household.
Her whole existence was largely confined to this below-stairs world, a realm designed for efficiency and, critically, for the complete invisibility of her labor.
Her day commenced long before the city even began to stir, typically around 5:00 a.m.,
5 a.m.
and it could stretch for up to 16 hours.
16 hours. Just imagine that level of sustained physical exertion day in and day out with precious little variation.
It's hard to fathom today.
And where did she start her day? You mentioned the servants' quarters.
Yes, in a small, often bitterly cold attic room. This was common for live-in servants.
Not exactly luxurious.
Far from it. These rooms were usually sparsely furnished, little more than a bed, a wash bowl, perhaps a modest table and chair. Starkly reflecting the incredibly limited personal space and possessions afforded to domestic staff, it was certainly no cozy retreat.
And the placement of these rooms was deliberate, right?
Absolutely. What's particularly telling here is the architectural segregation. The servant quarters were deliberately separated from the main living areas, often accessed via rear stairs or hidden passages.
Out of sight, out of mind.
That was the idea. This design wasn't accidental. It was intended to keep servants out of sight and, importantly, to prevent the intrusion of cooking smells or the sounds of their labor from disturbing the family's peace.
It was a physical manifestation of the social hierarchy.
Exactly. A deliberate strategy to enforce control and maintain the invisibility of the labor that underpinned the household's comfort. The very layout of the house constantly reminded Inga of her subordinate, often unseen position.
So what were these first chores of the day at 5 a.m.?
Even before the family was awake, Inga was intensely busy. Her initial duties included the crucial task of lighting wood-burning stoves.
Not just one, probably several.
Throughout the house, yeah. And cleaning and relaying grates and fireplaces. Imagine doing that in multiple rooms in the pre-dawn darkness, often with dirty hands and freezing fingers, especially in a Minneapolis winter.
Ugh, yeah. And then there was water?
A huge task. A significant portion of her morning was dedicated to fetching large quantities of fresh water from external sources, maybe a well, a pump, or even a communal tap down the street. Running water wasn't a common convenience in many homes then.
And this water had to be hauled.
Often in heavy buckets, yes. And then heated over the stove for both kitchen use and the family's washing and bathing. This wasn't just turning on a tap. It was a grueling physical process that consumed precious morning hours.
Okay, fires lit, water heating, then breakfast.
Then preparing breakfast for the employer's family, typically utilizing a coal or wood-fueled range that needed constant tending to maintain the right temperature.
And the physical exertion was immediate and constant from the get-go.
Absolutely. Encompassing tasks such as scrubbing floors, often on hands and knees, sweeping the main rooms to remove the ubiquitous soot from the fires and lamps, and dirt tracked in.
And the less pleasant tasks.
Yes, the unpleasant but necessary duty of emptying chamber pots from the bedrooms before the family even awoke. There was no glamour, just relentless, often unpleasant manual labor.
And once breakfast was served and meticulously cleared away, it didn't stop.
Not even close. Inga's work continued with an unceasing rhythm. She adhered to a strict daily schedule, a relentless cycle of chores that must have felt like they would never, ever end.
What truly stands out, maybe conveying the sheer intensity of it all, are specific tasks like Laundry day.
Oh, laundry day. Almost universally designated for Mondays, apparently.
And it had a nickname.
It was frequently referred to as the weekly affliction.
Affliction, that tells you something.
It does, because it was a multi-day, utterly labor-intensive nature. This wasn't just throwing clothes in a machine. It was an epic, full-body undertaking that demanded incredible stamina.
Okay, break it down for us. How did laundry work back then?
Right. First, until commercial soap became more widely available and affordable, soap was often homemade,
Homemade? From what?
usually from collected animal fat and lye. Imagine rendering animal fat, handling caustic lye, just to make the soap before you even start washing.
Okay, wow. Step 1.
Then, step 2, water. Vast quantities of fresh water had to be hauled, maybe from a distant stream, or if there wasn't a pump nearby, and then heated over an open fire or on the stove. Clothes were frequently left to soak overnight in a large basin to loosen the dirt.
So Monday might just be prep and soaking.
Often, yes. Then the next day, usually Tuesday, was entirely devoted to the washing and drying process itself,
The scrubbing part.
the scrubbing part. Each item, from delicate lace collars to heavy wool blankets or cotton sheets, was scrubbed by hand on a washboard.
I've seen those in museums. Corrugated metal or wood.
Exactly. Requiring vigorous squeezing and rubbing against those ridges, an incredibly taxing physical act, especially on the knuckles and arms.
Okay, scrubbed clean. Then what?
Then, a new fire might need to be prepared, and the laundry was often boiled in a large tub or cauldron with clean water. This is a crucial step to kill lice or fleas, which were common, and generally sanitize the fabrics.
Boiling
Yep. Agitated with a long wooden washing stick. Then they were rinsed, usually twice, in large tubs of clean, cold water. This often included a bluing stage, adding a small amount of blue dye to counteract yellowing and make white fabrics appear brighter.
It was a real science.
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
A multi-step, complex process.
And then came the wringing and drying, I assume.
Right. Excess water was squeezed out, often using a hand-crank clothes wringer, those two rollers you feed the clothes between. A big technological step when it arrived, but still manual labor.
Better than wringing by hand, though.
Definitely. Before finally hanging the clothes on a line to dry, either outdoors on a sunny day or, more often in a climate like Minneapolis, indoors near a warm fire or stove.
Which meant the whole house.
Would be filled with the steamy smell of drying laundry and damp clothes hanging everywhere. Not exactly pleasant for anyone.
So laundry could easily take 2, maybe 3 days from start to finish.
Easily. And that led directly into ironing, typically performed on Tuesdays or Wednesdays once things were dry.
And ironing wasn't easy either.
No. This involved using heavy sad irons, a term derived from an Old English word for solid, meaning heavy.
Cast iron, basically.
Exactly. Heated directly on the stove or by the fire. Often, a servant would rotate multiple irons so one was always heating while another was in use.
And you had to be careful not to scorch things.
Extremely careful. And the iron surface itself required meticulous maintenance. Needed to be kept clean, maybe sandpapered or polished, and lightly greased with beeswax or tallow to prevent rusting and ensure it glided smoothly over the fabric. It was a constant battle to keep these tools in working order.
Okay, so that's the weekly affliction. What about the rest of the week's midday grind?
Beyond this multi-day laundry ordeal, Inga's midday tasks included the meticulous dusting, cleaning, and polishing of furniture, glassware, porcelain, and metal objects throughout the entire house.
And dust was a big issue.
A huge issue. This was a continuous battle against the pervasive soot produced by coal fires and gas lamps, and the dirt that easily entered homes due to the common absence of window screens.
So constant cleaning.
Constant. And carpets. They required regular deep cleaning, sometimes involving their complete removal from the room, taking them outside, hanging them over a line, and beating them with a carpet beater to dislodge accumulated dirt. An immense, dusty, back-breaking undertaking.
It sounds quite literally never-ending.
That's the sense you get from the accounts. Just a relentless cycle.
So what about the afternoon? Did the pace slow down at all?
Not really. The focus might shift slightly. The afternoon was primarily consumed by preparing the main evening meal, which could be quite elaborate in middle or upper class homes.
More cooking.
Lots more cooking. Plus tasks like polishing silver, a demanding task in itself to maintain that glimmering facade of affluence and the mending of clothes. Tears, worn patches, button sewing, darning socks.
All done by hand.
All done by hand. But through all these tasks, Inga remained constantly at the beck and call of the family.
How did that work? How did they call her?
Well, technology played a role. Communication devices such as call bells, maybe a pull system with wires running through the walls located throughout the house.
ringing a bell in the kitchen or servant area.
Exactly. And in some larger, more modern homes, even speaking tubes connecting different levels. These ensured her immediate response to any demand, whether she was in the middle of peeling potatoes or taking a brief moment for herself.
So no real downtime.
Very little. Employers' expectations could be arbitrary and demanding. A whim could interrupt any task. And servants were generally expected to defer to their social betters, without question, without complaint. It was a constant state of readiness, of being available.
This is where we glimpse maybe a crucial human element amidst all this relentless toil.
How do you mean?
Well, amidst this constant demand, maybe Inga might occasionally find a brief moment of quiet, perhaps while preparing vegetables in the kitchen, peeling something repetitive, allowing her mind to wander.
A mental escape.
Yeah, perhaps she'd drift back to her family in Norway, picturing their faces. Or maybe think about the friends she had made within the tight-knit Norwegian community here in America. Maybe she would pull out a cherished letter received from home, carefully folded and worn, rereading its familiar words. That tangible connection to her past, a powerful symbol of the enduring ties that bound her to her distant homeland.
Those moments, however fleeting, must have offered a vital emotional respite. Tiny islands of personal space and reflection in a day otherwise completely consumed by physical labor and the demands of others.
For a young woman so far from home, these quiet internal journeys provided a necessary mental break, allowed her to recharge maybe and hold on to the dreams that fueled her arduous daily grind.
It's in these quiet moments, the imagined ones, that we truly understand the depth of her resilience, perhaps.
Yeah, and as the day finally drew to a close, the evening wasn't quiet time either, was it?
No, the evening was a particularly busy period for all household staff. It involved serving the main dinner, which could be multiple courses.
Clearing the table between courses, bringing new dishes.
Exactly. And then meticulously washing all the dishes afterwards.
Yeah.
Often by hand in hot, greasy water with harsh soap. Pots, pans, fine china, glassware, silverware.
A mountain of washing up.
Pretty much. Inga's day typically concluded only after the family had retired for the night, ensuring their comfort was seen to right until the end.
So she couldn't just clock off when they finished eating.
Definitely not.
Oh.
Only then, late at night, would she likely partake in a quick, simple meal for herself in the kitchen, often consisting of plain fare, maybe leftovers, eating in solitude.
And even then, not quite done.
Not quite. Even before finally seeking rest, she would likely assist in putting the house to bed, which could include attending to the shutters, ensuring windows were secured, banking the fires, or making up bedroom fires for the night, ready for the cycle to begin anew at dawn.
Her work truly ended only when everyone else's did, and then some.
That seems to be the case.
Completely exhausted from a day that could easily span 16 hours, Inga would finally retreat to her small, often dark and cold attic room.
And her personal possessions, as we said, were typically few, often contained within a single steamer trunk, a real testament to the pared-down existence of a live-in domestic servant. Everything she owned fitting in one box.
And maybe, just maybe, before collapsing into sleep,
By the dim, flickering light of a candle, because electricity wasn't common in servants' quarters, even if the main house had it, she would often sit and write letters home.
that vital lifeline for immigrants.
Absolutely crucial. These communications were often a careful blend. Honest accounts, perhaps, of some aspects of her new life, but also hopeful embellishments, designed to reassure her family back in Norway that she was okay, that she was thriving, even if it meant omitting some of the harsher realities or the depth of her homesickness.
Protecting them, in a way.
Perhaps such letters, frequently penned, as one source puts it, with painful effort and at the sacrifice of precious time, served as a crucial means of expressing solidarity, battling homesickness, and reiterating a steadfast commitment to the family left behind. They were promises whispered across the ocean.
And what were her dreams as she drifted off to sleep, often with the ache of the day still lingering in her muscles?
In her quiet moments, Inga would likely dream of saving enough money to achieve some measure of independence. Perhaps to send passage money for a younger sibling to join her in America, offering them a similar chance, however hard. Or maybe, just maybe, to realize that enduring immigrant aspiration of purchasing a small piece of land somewhere, a tangible symbol of self-sufficiency, her own place.
But that pride in her newfound independence, however limited, was invariably mixed with a profound yearning for her homeland, right?
Absolutely. A bittersweet emotional landscape, common to countless immigrants of her era. Pride in survival and progress, mixed with deep homesickness.
This brings us to a crucial aspect of her survival and resilience. How does she maintain her sense of self and community amidst such isolation and relentless work?
Sundays. Sundays offered Inga a crucial reprieve from her demanding work schedule and an invaluable opportunity for social and spiritual connection.
These weren't just days off, they were lifelines.
Absolutely lifelines.
That's where the community truly came in. She would experience the profound joy and comfort of attending a Norwegian-language church service.
A central gathering point for her countrymen. These Norwegian Lutheran churches served as vital social and religious centers, providing a visible and comforting link to the traditions and language of Norway.
They weren't just places of worship, they were true community hubs, offering a slice of home in a foreign land.
Exactly. It's worth noting, however, that while these institutions provided immense cohesion, they could also be sites of internal conflict.
Oh, how so?
But they often reflected varied theological and social class perspectives that were brought over directly from Norway. Different synods, different regional backgrounds. So even within the comfort of her own community, there were complexities mirroring the divisions and nuances of the homeland. It wasn't always a monolithic block, but a dynamic, evolving mini-society.
Interesting. And beyond religious services?
Inga might also participate in activities with fraternal societies, like the Sons of Norway, which, fascinatingly, was actually founded right there in Minneapolis in 1895, the year we're focusing on.
Perfect timing for her.
Or the Daughters of Norway, established in the same city just a couple of years later in 1897.
And what did these societies offer?
They offered essential mutual aid, think financial protection against sickness or death, like early insurance, a critical safety net, and alongside that, crucial social support through meetings, singing groups, libraries, cultural events, often conducted entirely in Norwegian.
Keeping the language and culture alive.
Very much so. And the Daughters of Norway, specifically, was instrumental in supporting single, working-class women, many of whom, like Inga, were domestic servants.
How did they help them directly?
It offered them vital insurance and sick leave payments, providing a safety net often unavailable elsewhere, especially for women in precarious jobs. And crucially, it also provided a dedicated place for them to speak their native tongue, socialize with peers who understood their unique challenges, and reinforce their cultural identity in a foreign land.
So these communal gatherings provided a vital counterpoint to the isolation of domestic service.
Absolutely, offering a powerful sense of belonging.
Okay, so let's explore what it meant for Inga to navigate this new culture more broadly. The immigrant experience for Norwegians like her in late 19th century Minneapolis was a complex tapestry. Woven with threads of aspiration, yes, but also arduous labor and significant challenges related to adaptation and preserving their cultural heritage.
And one of the most immediate and pervasive challenges for nearly all new arrivals was the sheer language barrier.
Right, English.
Inga's struggle with English phrases was a common, almost universal experience. The ability to speak English was intrinsically linked to successful integration. It influenced access to better education, essential health care, and broader, maybe better paying employment opportunities. It was, quite literally, a key to unlocking the doors of the New World.
And what's particularly striking is how attitudes towards language shifted in the U.S. around this time.
Yeah, it wasn't always hostile.
No. While the United States had historically exhibited some tolerance for diverse languages, especially earlier on, this attitude began to shift significantly in the late 19th and early 20th century.
What drove the shift?
Well, events like World War I, a bit later than Inga's time, but rooted in this period's anxieties, dramatically intensified suspicion towards non-English languages. It led to increased pressure for immigrants to assimilate into an English-speaking culture. This wasn't just about convenience anymore. It became about perceived loyalty, national loyalty.
Right. This shift raised profound questions about national identity. You had political figures, including former President Theodore Roosevelt and then President Woodrow Wilson, publicly advocating for one flag and one language.
And they actively denounced hyphenated Americans.
Yes, a derogatory term for those who retain their native tongues or customs, implying divided loyalties. The message was becoming increasingly clear. Conform or be viewed with suspicion.
And it went further than just rhetoric, didn't it?
Oh yes. By 1919, 15 U.S. states had actually mandated English as the sole language of instruction in all primary schools, reflecting a public fear of foreign influences and a desire for cultural homogeneity.
So this immense societal pressure meant that individuals speaking languages other than English often felt compelled to conceal their ethnic origins, abandon ancestral languages. Millions were essentially taught to feel ashamed of their heritage. It must have been incredibly painful and isolating for many.
Absolutely. So for Inga, the profound desire to truly belong, to be accepted, was intrinsically intertwined with the daunting task of mastering a new language.
And this process was made even more difficult by these prevailing societal attitudes that viewed multilingualism not as an asset, but as a potential sign of divided allegiance. It was a constant internal and external struggle, this negotiation between retaining her identity and achieving acceptance.
Beyond the language barrier, the very nature of domestic work itself contributed significantly to social isolation. There's that quote from one maid that just resonates.
What was it?
What I minded was the awful lonesomeness. That feeling must have been absolutely pervasive for so many, like Inga.
Yeah, awful lonesomeness.
It was, profoundly so. Live-in servants were often on call 24 hours a day, as we discussed, with very limited time off, typically only Sunday afternoons and perhaps one other afternoon or evening a week if they were lucky.
Which severely restricted their social contact.
And contributed to a profound sense of loneliness, even while living physically within a family in a bustling city.
Unlike other working women who might have more structured hours, or maybe opportunities for collective action and camaraderie in a factory or shop.
Right. Domestic servants often lacked a robust social network outside their employer's home. This exacerbated feelings of isolation, especially for those who are young, single, and far from their families and established communities. Imagine being surrounded by people all day, yet feeling utterly alone and without true connection.
It's a particular kind of loneliness.
It is. And that leads us directly to this significant power imbalance inherent in the employee dynamics of the time.
This was not an equal relationship.
Not even remotely. The relationship between domestic servants and their employers in the late 19th century was characterized by a severe power imbalance and inherently low social status for the servants.
They were expected to defer completely to their social betters.
Always. And were often subject to the arbitrary whims of their employers. Their lives were closely surveilled, with restrictions even on their spare time activities, who they could see, where they could go.
And we even see this myth of familial belonging, right?
Yes. Where employers sometimes claim to be like parents to their employees, framing the relationship as one of benevolence and care.
But it wasn't really about genuine care, was it?
Often not. It was frequently a tactic. It exerted considerable emotional pressure on young women like Inga to prioritize their employers' needs above their own, often leading to excessive demands and blurred lines that exploited their sense of loyalty or obligation. It was a subtle but quite insidious form of control.
And beyond the emotional pressure, there were significant financial vulnerabilities.
Huge ones. Wages were low, as we've established. And while room and board were included, this often came with the implicit expectation of being constantly available, ready to work at any moment.
And sometimes employers even sponsored them.
Yes, employers sometimes sponsored migrant servants by loaning them money for travel costs from Norway or for required uniforms. These loans were then repaid through wage deductions.
Which effectively indebted the servant.
Exactly, making it incredibly difficult to leave abusive or simply unbearable situations without losing everything they'd earned or being unable to pay back the debt.
Wow. And here's a particularly insidious detail that highlights their vulnerability. The character system.
Yes, the references.
The ability of mistresses, primarily, to withhold or give a bad character, essentially a reference, was a powerful tool of control.
Because you couldn't get another job without one.
Pretty much. Few servants could secure another position, especially a decent one, without a good reference, even if their previous employment was deeply unsatisfactory or even abusive.
This created a highly vulnerable position for young, often single, immigrant women. They were far from their kin, had limited financial recourse, and few avenues for protection if mistreated. No unions, no real legal protection.
This dynamic highlights a crucial dual burden for immigrants like Inga, doesn't it?
It really does. On one hand, the immediate immense pressure to assimilate into American customs and language,
And on the other,
simultaneously striving to preserve their distinct cultural heritage. The expectation to adopt American ways, particularly in language, stood in direct tension with the deep desire to maintain their Norwegian identity. It created this ongoing, often painful negotiation of belonging.
that occasional loneliness Inga experienced, even surrounded by people.
It underscores the profound challenge of finding true connection and understanding across these vast cultural and social divides.
But despite these immense pressures and challenges, we know Norwegian immigrants actively work to preserve their culture and support one another.
They absolutely did. We mentioned that in Norwegian-language churches, they served as critical social and religious anchors.
Offering services entirely in Norwegian, providing that spiritual connection and a familiar cultural space that must have been profoundly comforting.
Definitely. These churches were not merely places of worship, they were central community hubs. Visible links to the traditions of Norway, they offered comfort, social connection, and a place to maintain linguistic and cultural ties.
But you also mentioned potential conflict within them.
Right. It's important to remember that these religious institutions were also sometimes sites of internal conflict. Different synods often reflected varied theological and social class perspectives carried over from Norway. This meant that while the church provided cohesion, it also mirrored and sometimes even exacerbated regional and religious rivalries from the homeland, demonstrating the complex role of faith in both uniting and, at times, subtly dividing the immigrant community.
Fascinating complexity. And the fraternal societies like Sons of Norway and Daughters of Norway.
Also instrumental, founded right there in Minneapolis around the time Inga was there. These organizations provided crucial mutual aid.
The insurance aspect.
Exactly. Offering financial protection against sickness or death, a vital safety net in a time before modern social services. And they also offered essential social support through meetings, singing groups, cultural events, all conducted in Norwegian.
And the Daughters of Norway specifically focused on women like Inga.
Yes, it specifically supported single working-class women, many of whom were domestic servants, by offering insurance and sick leave payments, and profoundly providing a sanctuary where these women could speak their native tongue, socialize with others who shared their experiences, and reinforce their cultural identity in a foreign land.
These community efforts truly underscore the remarkable resilience
And determination, of Norwegian immigrants to maintain their identity and build a robust support system in a new and often challenging environment.
Okay, so let's tie all of Inga's daily life back to the economic reality she faced. Domestic servant in 1895 Minneapolis.
Right. It was a profession characterized by low catch wages, yes, but also that significant hidden benefit, the potential for saving because room and board were included.
And her aspirations for the future, her dreams, were deeply rooted in these economic calculations. It was a long-term investment in her own and her family's prospects.
Domestic service, while undoubtedly demanding, did offer a relatively stable form of employment for women, especially immigrants, when other options were extremely limited or even more precarious.
But the pay itself, the cash in hand, was generally quite low.
Very low. For context, a housekeeper, which was considered a top position for female servants, maybe managing other staff, might expect to earn between $50 to $150 a month in the late 1880s to early 1900s.
Okay, that sounds potentially decent for the time.
For a top position, maybe. But for general domestic workers, like Inga likely was, especially those perhaps starting out or working in less affluent homes or even hotels, wages could be as low as $12 a month.
$12 a month, wow.
And to put that in stark perspective, a reporter's investigation in Minneapolis back in 1891 found that the average weekly pay for women working in factories and shops was about $5.18. But, crucially, their estimated actual living expenses for room, food, clothing, etc. were $6.25 per week.
So they were earning less than it cost to survive.
Many were, constantly sinking into debt or relying on others, which makes the domestic service calculation look different.
How so?
What's truly fascinating here, and often overlooked when we just look at cash wages, is the crucial benefit of included room and board.
Right. That wasn't counted in the factory wage.
Exactly. The inclusion of shelter and food as part of the domestic servant's compensation was a highly significant factor. While cash wages were modest, maybe $12, $16, $20 a month, the provision of these necessities meant that a portion of those earnings could actually be saved.
Because their biggest expenses were covered.
Precisely. For example, a servant earning $16, $20 a month, as noted for another single woman in Minneapolis during this period, could realistically accumulate savings, even while indulging in small personal expenses like clothes or sending a little money home. This was a critical difference for the factory worker potentially going into debt each week.
And just to give folks a modern-day equivalent for those numbers, the purchasing power of $100 back in 1895 is equivalent to roughly $3,800 today.
Right. So you can imagine how every single penny saved counted for Inga, accumulating slowly, painstakingly, but surely. It wasn't about getting rich quickly, but about acquiring crucial capital for the future.
This economic calculus of migration suggests that despite the low cash wages, the perceived economic advantage of included room and board was a compelling reason for immigrants like Inga to choose domestic service, even over other equally demanding but less financially viable occupations.
The ability to save money, even if it was small amounts, was the critical factor. It differentiated this work from other low-wage jobs where the cost of living might simply consume all earnings, leaving nothing for the future.
So for Inga, this meant that the immediate hardships of her daily work, the 16-hour days, the isolation, they were offset by the tangible possibility of accumulating capital, a pathway to future security that was simply unavailable in the increasingly crowded and economically constrained villages of Norway.
A calculated sacrifice.
Exactly. And what did that hard-won capital go towards? What were the dreams it funded?
Inga's dreams of saving enough money to send for a sibling to join her or to buy that small piece of land were not merely personal desires. They represent a common and powerfully enduring aspiration among Norwegian immigrants.
That agrarian ideal again.
Still there. The Homestead Act of 1862, offering that 160 acres, had been a major pull factor for Norwegians. Many harbor this deep, almost spiritual desire for agrarian independence and self-sufficiency.
And even though good farmland was getting scarce by the 1880s and 90s,
The dream of land ownership persisted. It drove many, like Inga, to urban centers specifically to earn the capital necessary to eventually acquire property, perhaps further west, perhaps later in life, perhaps even for the next generation. This demonstrates incredible long-term vision, a refusal to let the dream die completely.
and it wasn't just about individual gain, was it? It was deeply communal, or at least familial.
Very much so. The act of saving money and sending it home remittances was a common practice. We have evidence, for instance, of another Swedish immigrant sending a regular $5 every 6 months back to their family.
That doesn't sound like much, but it would have been significant back home.
Hugely significant. And this highlights an important, often overlooked aspect of the immigrant experience. Individual economic efforts were frequently part of a larger intergenerational investment strategy.
So Inga's savings weren't solely for her own immediate benefit.
Likely not. They were often intended to uplift her entire family, either by facilitating their immigration and reuniting them in America, or by improving their circumstances back in Norway, maybe paying off a debt, buying tools, helping a sibling get married.
This collective approach to economic betterment underscores the strong familial bonds.
And the long-term vision that characterized so many immigrant journeys. Her quiet pride in her newfound independence, however limited, coupled with that profound yearning for her homeland, reflects the complex emotional landscape of pursuing the American dream while maintaining deep, enduring ties to her origins. It's a powerful blend of sacrifice, hope, and unwavering familial loyalty.
So as we reflect on Inga's life, her day in the life really does offer this poignant microcosm of the broader immigrant experience in late 19th century America.
It really does. Her story vividly illustrates that profound balance between the hopeful pursuit of a new life and the formidable challenges of adaptation, cultural preservation, and just relentless hard work that defined that era for so many.
Her arduous labor, though largely invisible to the affluent society she served, formed a truly critical foundation for the societal functioning and prosperity of American households.
We've seen how powerful push factors from Norway, severe economic hardship, overpopulation, social pressures, combined with those alluring pull factors from America. The promise of opportunity, land, wages compelled individuals like Inga to embark on a journey that often exchanged one form of demanding existence for another.
Albeit crucially with the tangible promise of future advancement. A path forward, however difficult, for themselves or their descendants.
Exactly. Her daily routine, from those brutally early morning chores in that small, cold attic room to the late-night letter writing by candlelight, truly underscores the immense physical toll and the pervasive social isolation inherent in domestic service.
And the deliberate architectural design of servant quarters, the call bells, the power dynamics.
They highlight a system meticulously designed to maintain social hierarchy and control over the lives of those who, ironically, kept society running smoothly.
Yet amidst these significant challenges, Inga's story reveals a remarkable, enduring resilience.
It really does. Her unwavering efforts to overcome language barriers, her active participation in the vibrant Norwegian immigrant community through churches and fraternal organizations,
And her persistent dreams of saving for land or bringing family over.
all speak to a powerful drive for self-improvement and collective upliftment. Her hope wasn't naive. It was forged day by day in the crucible of daily struggle.
The economic realities she faced, characterized by low wages, but that crucial life-sustaining benefit of room and board, fundamentally shaped her aspirations and her ability to realize them.
Her capacity to save, however modest those individual sums were, was not just a personal achievement, but an investment in a larger intergenerational vision of the American dream, a dream that often involved uniting family members or securing that piece of land, even if it meant years of strenuous, often thankless labor.
Inga's experience, her quiet dedication and relentless adaptability, truly embodies the enduring spirit of countless immigrants. Those who, through their tireless efforts, helped to shape the economic and cultural landscape of America into what it is today.
Her story reminds us that progress, societal progress, is often built on the unseen labor and profound sacrifices of individuals striving simply for a better future.
So as you go about your day, perhaps take a moment to consider, what are the invisible labors that underpin our modern society, often performed by those we might not fully see or acknowledge?
And what aspirations, what profound hopes for their future or the future of their families drive those who undertake them?
How do the quiet, persistent efforts of individuals, past and present, contribute to the bigger picture we so often take for granted?
It's definitely a thought worth mulling over.
Until our next deep dive.